Another month, and guess what? Another game jam. Yeah, alright, I'll admit it, I'm a liar last time when I said,
hey, it's me, MZ, I'm never doing game jam. Oh, it's me from the past.
Yeah, so in case I can't find the clip, I'll just use that. It's pretty much what I sound like anyway. What can I say? 1 month must be the perfect time to space out these game jams. It's just enough space for me to forget all the agony, all the anxiety, alright? And my brain's all fresh, and I'm like, oh, it sounds like a good idea. But I feel like in reality, it just triggers my PTSD from doing college papers. The old reoccurring nightmare about missing college classes or missing exams has just evolved into itch.io comments that correctly point out bugs that I pushed off, but I had to get water balloons or frogs. I don't know what I add to games. It's all dumb. But you know what? I thought this one was a good one, so why don't we get into it? GODOT Wild Jam 61. One jump at a time. The theme this week was Ascension, but as it was being announced, I made a promise to myself to change up the art. Sure, 99% of everything I do is totally new art, I rarely ever reuse an asset, but to be honest with you, it has a certain style and look that kind of repeats. There's only so many times I can draw that same wooden floorboard and maintain any semblance of self-respect. With this rattling around in my head, as the game jam gets announced, my immediate thought is an abstract platformer. At first, I was just going to do a silhouette for the main character, but due to the way that I sketch things out, I ended up having an outline. Also, good readable silhouettes are much harder than you'd think, or at least for me with the perspective, because this character, I wanted to have wings, so he just looked like a big blobby mess without the outline. The initial plan was to have a white background with black platforms, and then the character would be white, but they have a black outline. And I actually have to admit, this is a little more charming than I let on. When I remember this moment, I thought it was too simple, so I had to add stuff. I added particles early on, and then I added some other colors, but I could definitely imagine having a level in this color scheme. Like, it actually worked better now that I look back on it. Oh, this character, by the way, deemed Bemmy, short for, and I have it here, Blubber Eyes McGillicuddy. Yeah. So my girlfriend's banned from naming these hard work creations now. Oh, and one other big change here compared to my other games is I'm actually using the isometric perspective. I think I loosely say that for other things I've worked on, but it's all been orthogonal? Or I don't know, orthogonal?
Orthogonal.
Yeah, I was right, orthogonal. Yeah, fuck you. So I do a little bit of research learning that. It wasn't too hard, actually. I spend way more time just drawing all these tiles. Also, around this time, it's when I realized that the movement was a little bad. Basically, when you held a diagonal, either top left, bottom left, any of that, you wouldn't run the same ratio that the isometric tiles were drawn. You wouldn't run 2 to the right and 1 up. Instead, you just slowly drift off the edge. This shouldn't have been that hard to fix, but the problem is my understanding of movement comes from me watching a Heartbeast video from the 80s. Like, gun to my head, if you told me to explain what normalizing a vector is, I'd get like halfway there and then just give up. I had to write a will. I'm not going to be here long. So I get in there, I started messing with some numbers. No, but figuring that out actually made a world of difference for designing these levels. Now I can sort of lock the player into these straightaways. And I think to me, it feels pretty good, especially compared to what it used to feel like before. I also work on falling off the edge at some point in this time. It's super simple. You just have an area 2D node, and if the overlapping body's size is 0, then the player's in falling state. So from here, I have some basic platforms and a player you can control that can fall. And the next big step is to figure out how to make a platformer. Oh, you hear that? It's the, is it? Oh, no, god damn it. I was trying to do a bit, alright. It was the tween node, okay? It's here. It's gonna do all the work for us. So for all the jumping, I'm just going to be tweening the player from the shadow to the top of the jump and back down. And in typical fashion, the shadow is your true position at all times, and the rest is just for show. You also make a variable called jumping, and so if the player is jumping, they can't be falling. That was easy stuff. Let's move on. That stuff, come on now. Have you heard about this coyote timing? Apparently that's all the rage nowadays. Jump buffering, you gotta add that, because no one knows when to jump or when to buffer. Oh, in all seriousness, when this first started, I thought the brilliant idea should be spacebar to jump, hold spacebar for the charge jump, and then you realize that every good platformer has hold to jump and you release to fall faster. So I spent probably a whole day on this charge jump thing just to scrap it all and make an actual good platforming system. And I'm really glad I did. It feels much better this way. At this point, the dopamine receptors they're off the charts. I'm having a blast adding in mechanics. And I get the idea to add in like P-Speed from Mario, you know, when he's walking, walks on the piano like a cat does. Like, doesn't he do a sound? I don't know. He does a sound, right? Yeah, it does. And so you run in the same direction and that sound plays and you move like a fraction faster, but you feel like you're doing heroin. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, hey, what if we take the super jump when you held spacebar, put that on E now, and break every platforming puzzle we were gonna make, because that's what that does. All right, okay, it's starting to come together. Oh, listen, I don't want to jinx it, but I think we got a game jam here. Although, after adding all that to the player, I really couldn't help but feel like the environment was lacking now. So I spent a big chunk of my Tuesday, the big empty day of my week, to fully draw out a tile set, and I had this checkpoint that I did a little bit earlier, and it all kind of blends together. I'm realizing I totally lucked into this, but because I started making the environment all objects and then graduated to learning the tile sheet, I maintained the best of both worlds. I had tiles for static platforms, but objects for more dynamic or moving platforms. So in order to make development move pretty quickly, what I do is just map everything out with the tiles, even if they were moving platforms, just map out their two positions they'd move to, and then come back in with the objects and put them in. And I made a conscious decision really early on to keep the distance between platforms the same when they're objects, meaning that if you're doing the tile set, you're locked in, but the objects can be anywhere, but I want to make sure they're the same distance. They're like one platform worth of jumping or two or three. This led to a pretty good workflow for creating levels. It wasn't the fastest, but the amount of structure meant that I wasn't really guessing that much. Also, pretty early into this, I decided, hey, let's do moving platforms because we're already making new stuff. Just keep adding on new stuff. And I gotta give a shout out to this short I watched by, I think it's pronounced Chalisad. He was adding moving platforms to his cool looking indie Zelda-like game. And he said something that stuck with me. It was something about how you have your previous known position and your current position, and you just take the difference and apply it to the player. And my mind was blown. I was like, I don't know even how that worked. That's amazing. That's so cool. It's not perfect because he didn't have a tutorial. He just said some stuff, and I tried my best to make it work. So mine bugs out occasionally, but it's good enough, at least for a game jam. For actually moving the platform, well, guess what? God. Okay, whatever. It was just the tween node. Great. Now we can't do any more knocking on the table bit. That bit's done. I hope you're happy. Okay, I know it's weird. I keep bringing up the tween node like it's something special, but it's actually just so good at this particular task. And I didn't even realize it at first. So if I have moving platforms in my game, there's oftentimes an issue where the platforms aren't syncing up correctly. Measuring out the time it's going to take for a platform to get somewhere and how long it's staying there, it's just numbers you have to all kind of keep in your head. But the beauty of the tween node is that regardless of what I'm doing, it's going to lock every platform into that same tween node's time frame. There's some downsides, so if I have one platform that's taking 15 seconds, every other platform has to wait for that last one to finish. But the upside is I can make them all take 5 seconds and they lock in like a machine. I also can do some funky stuff where there's like a tween 5 that everything on this level of tween takes 5 seconds to finish, and this one's a tween 10, so it'll take double the time, but there'll be interesting ways that plays with the player. If I have to make the player wait for a platform to arrive, I can do something like that here. Man, what a breeze this made designing and developing these levels. Everything instantly felt snappy and connected. Nothing felt random. It all felt so structured, but in a good way. In the time from now, I'm probably coming up on Thursday, and I had the smart idea to just take that PTO day off. Best decision I made, and I jump headfirst into level design. I think I probably played too many platformers growing up as a kid because I get like 3 or 4 moving platforms in and think, all right, that's boring. Let's add disappearing platforms. Thank God for my girlfriend KP at the time, because I bring her in constantly to playtest. Her and a separate friend, but she's particularly good at it because she has little to no experience moving with a keyboard and mouse. Well, I guess just the keyboard here. So for the first level, I had disappearing platforms, and moving disappearing platforms. I try to ramp it up slowly, but I guess I go too hard. I don't have to tell you. I got to see some of the psychology play out because I think that when you get on a disappearing platform, your brain just screams like, get off, you're gonna die, even if you have like 3 seconds. So the one that was giving her a lot of trouble was this moving platform with 4 disappearing tiles, and it just never really clicked, so I kept nerfing it until it was in a pretty easy spot for me, but difficult for her, and I think that was the right call. I think if you go any harder, people won't play your game, especially in a game jam. But I ultimately wrap up that first level, move on to the second level, and at this point I also decide that I should do different color schemes for each level. Nothing crazy, but just using that canvas modulate to tweak the tiles, and then there's a background just colored rectangle, so changing that. I think it was a great call. It gave all the worlds a different feel. Maybe it gives like a sense of progression. And speaking of progression, I did make the decision to strip the player down of all the elements I added early on, and instead upgrade the player. When you beat a level, you sort of get an object that lets you clear a gap you couldn't clear before, and then it gets more complex for the next level. It was a great call, a little time consuming. I had to go back and edit the character model, take away the wings, do stuff like that, but of course, definitely worth it. Oh, also, I take a decent amount of time here getting elevators in the game. I, for some reason, was dead set on you going back. I wanted to have secrets you could go back to, and for the most part, that didn't make it in. But the elevators work. As spaghetti code as they are, I would never touch them again, because they'll break. But in the timeline now, I'm about to hit Friday, or maybe I'm in Friday, and I have 1.5 levels done. Instead of doing the mature thing of just trying to finish it up with 2 levels, I thought, I have 3 mechanics, I have this tall jump, so let's have 3 levels. I spent all night Friday just grinding out the second level, going to the third, and keeping in mind what the ending is going to look like. I'm not great with story stuff. I could never really settle on something that doesn't feel so cheesy or forced. But as I'm developing that last level, I get through a section in the beginning that's kind of a fun, fast-paced platforming, and then I let it open up a little, and I feel like, oh wow, wouldn't it be so cool if you had a left side or right side, you did both challenges, and it kind of opened up a portal. Instantly I knew that's what it should be, but it's all a crazy blur to me now. I think I did 12 hours Saturday, I got out of work at noon, and I did noon to midnight, and then I woke up at 4 a.m. Sunday, and just went as hard as I could until it was due at 4 p.m. Probably the worst part of all that was all the music I always put off to the very end. So it is noon on Sunday, and I'm trying to write a song, and I'm so mad because I feel like anything I put out is going to be like, oh, this guy calls himself a musician, and this is his song. It's like, well, I had no time. I couldn't just come up with something. I feel like there's so much pressure. I'm scrambling. I'm trying to grab the MIDI keyboard. I'm taking through tambourine sounds. I look like a crazy person. Things were also getting heavily cut so that I could make it to the end. Things like the tall jump were pretty much entirely removed. It's in the game as an Easter egg, but I didn't design any levels for it. The focus in these last hours, as I'm sleep deprived, was just get it to the finish line as best you can. And I'm happy to say, at around 3:20 p.m. on Sunday, I uploaded the game, got into the game jam, and immediately went to sleep for 3 hours. Wow. I said in the beginning that a month is a great time to forget all the stress and anxiety of a game jam, but after that, it's really hard to believe that 1 month is going to truly reset me. I remember my left elbow was just completely red from sitting here at the computer. I just brought a pillow over to try to help, and I would constantly bring my laptop to work every day that week and sneak it in, not just on my lunch, but also like, oh, a 15-minute break, like get the laptop out, let's do some coloring on the level. And there's no real strong, compelling reason that I did that, aside from just trying to prove to myself that I can make something decent or fun. As much as I liked the last game jam, Scrap Heap, I didn't think it was fun. And I knew that near the end, especially when I could finally play it in those last hours, but you really can't do anything at that point in time. You're just kind of hoping people will see the effort you put in and sort of admire you for trying. But this game, Sunseeker, it might not be fun for everyone, but at least I can say that I actually enjoy playing it. I felt like it deserved such a better shot than any other game I worked on. That if I was going to go really hard on something, this was probably the game. And already I think the reception is better than the other two games I worked on. People seem happier with it, and that means a lot. Game jams are weird in that way, where it doesn't seem like you get anything out of them until someone says, great game, and then it all kind of feels worth it. I really hope you guys check it out. I would love to know what you guys think, even if you don't love it, even if you don't like it at all, actually. Still, it's nice to have feedback. I think it makes you better, even if it's hard to hear sometimes. I'll leave that link in the description. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.